So this book is Zen and the Art of Faking It by Jordan Sonnenblick. A note to the reader. There's that second person perspective in writing right off the bat. We hear about first person, I did this, I did that, we did this, we did that. We hear about third person, where it's a narrative where somebody is telling the story about the characters. But we don't hear second person too often. When the author or the character is talking directly to you, that would be second person perspective. A note to the reader. Have you ever switched schools? I have. And let me tell you, a school is a school is a school. Every middle school on God's green earth smells exactly the same because damp lockers, industrial cleaning fluids, and puke are universal. The lunch is the same. I mean, how many ways can you flavor a freaking tater tot? The guys are the same, like a show on Animal Planet without the cuddle factor. The girls are the same, Martians with human hormones. And the teachers? Ugh, please. So when I dragged my feet in their rotting sandals through the gray midwinter slush and up the poured concrete stairs of Harrisonville Middle School for the first time, I knew exactly what I was getting into. Sure I did. Welcome to Nowheresville. So, 8th grade, second semester, new state. Math was math, algebra, of course. They always stick the Asian kid in the algebra class. Science was science. Fortunately, I know how to roll a stupid little metal car down a ramp and use a stopwatch, so no problemo there. In English, all I could figure out with the first day was that the teacher was nuts. So again, same stuff, different time zone. Gym, lunch, I honed my skills at standing and sitting in the corner. I also continued my long-standing tradition of eating nothing but pasta and fruit in the cafeteria. I've never been to a public school that knew how to cook actual meat. Oh, I almost forgot. Home economics, brownies, made with applesauce. Ugh. No wonder America's kids have lost their way. It wasn't until the last class of the day that I even woke up. Now, back in Houston, we had been studying U.S. history for a whole year, but in Pennsylvania, for some odd reason, this one school had a special ancient world immersion grant, which meant two things. One, we'd be spending 5 months doing the exact same thing I did in 7th grade. Well, I guess you can never get enough pyramids, right? And two, I'd missed the whole second half of my country's past, which kind of stinks. I've been looking forward to learning how that whole revolution thing turned out. Anywho, I walked into social studies class alone that day, hovered by the door until I could see which seats would be empty, and then I eased my way along the wall and into a chair just as the teacher started clearing his throat to get the class quiet. What part of the school year is it? Did you catch that at the beginning?
Second semester.
When does the second semester start?
After the first 9 months.
Nope, that would be second quarter.
After fall break.
Nope, that would be second quarter.
After winter break.
After winter break, so what time of year is that?
Around January.
January. So it's January in Pennsylvania. What's the weather like in January in Pennsylvania?
Cold and snowy.
Cold, snowy. A little bit different than what the temperature's like in January here in Tennessee. Hence one of the reasons why I moved down to Tennessee, because I do not enjoy the cold. So it's January, second semester. Our main character, Stan Lee, shows up to social studies. Lucky for me, the chair turned out to be missing half of one back leg. I hit the floor with a lovely bang, and the whole class turned in time to enjoy the view of my books, my pens, my pencils, a transparent backpack tumbling down all over me. Yay!
Yay.
The teacher came hurtling over and reached down a hand to pull me up. I couldn't help but notice that he had a twinkle in his eye. An honest-to-God eye twinkle. How weird is that? You hear the cliche all the time, but in this case, literally, it was true. The guy had a white beard on a chubby beet red face and those sparkling eyes. My arm was being yanked out of its socket by Santa Claus. A little pretend voice in my head was telling me, stay down, but Santa would not be denied. When he wasn't delivering packages down the chimneys, this guy must have worked out like an Olympian. Hello there! he boomed. Then he paused and twinkled as I tried to be subtle about brushing pencil shavings out of the hair above my left ear. I figured the punchline was coming. Nice of you to drop in, har har, or whoa, bartender, I'll have what this kid's drinking. But after a beat, all Santa said was, you must be San Lee. I got a note you'd be coming sometime this week. I'm Mr. Dowd. Welcome to Harrisonville. You came just at the right time. We're studying a new unit today. I turned out the educational droning and checked out my classmates. Some of them had that look I'd seen in five other states, plus an airbase in Germany, like, the new kid fell, cool. Others just looked through me like, this new person does not matter in my little Pennsylvania life. And one girl with an unruly Aztec temple of brown hair and a Beatles t-shirt peered over a pair of tiny purple-tinted glasses and gave me a smile that I felt all the way down to my soggy socks. She had these shockingly gray eyes that locked right onto mine, angular cheekbones and super perfect teeth, which added up to a pretty intriguing look. Unfortunately, I got so distracted by Beetle Girl's face that I must have missed a fairly intense death stare from the guy to her right. Oh well. At least there's one human being in this burg. Two, if you believe friendly Santa guy was for real. I sat down and class started. Mr. Dowd made everyone copy down a chalkboard full of notes about Buddhism. It looked remarkably like the chalkboard full of Buddhism I had copied down on that first day of a unit back in Texas. I muttered under my breath, one moon shows in every pool, one moon. My favorite teacher ever, Mrs. Brown, had said that whenever I commented on how my school in Houston was just like my school before that in Alabama. Evidently, it was kind of a thing that Zen masters went around saying in Japan hundreds and hundreds of years ago. Mr. Dowd, can somebody describe him? His social studies teacher, what's he look like?
Santa Claus.
Courtney, go ahead.
He said that he looked like Santa Claus because of his big white beard and his red cheeks.
Now, I have to pay homage to one of my favorite teachers, Mr. Henshin. That is I. Mr. Henshin was, and I'm not exaggerating, he was about 7 feet tall.
Dang.
He was probably like 75 years old. He had a big, long, grizzly white beard, bald on top-ish with some hair around the side. Looked just like Santa Claus, just like Mr. Dowd. And he, too, had that twinkle in his eye. I love Mr. Henshin. He was one of my speech teachers and drama teachers in middle school. And he had this deep, billowing, loud voice. And anytime he would say, Mr. Henshin, that's I. And he'd do it all the time, in class, every day almost. Fantastic teacher. May God rest his soul. He's amazing. He passed away a number of years ago. Anyway, Mr. Henshin, and to me, because of my connection to that, when I see Mr. Dowd, I'm picturing a large Santa Claus looking guy. I was just like Mr. Henshin, who happened to be my middle school teacher when I was about San's age. So good connection there for me. Excuse me, Mr. Dowd was staring at me. Did you say something, Mr. Lee? He had to love his smooth use of a rhetorical question trick. I felt like blurting out, no, the fat kid in the corner is a ventriloquist and I'm his new dummy, duh. But my mom had told me not to draw attention to myself, that this school was the end of the line for me, so I played nicely with others. No, sir. He did that twinkle thing in his eye again. That's funny. I could have sworn you just murmured a really impressive quotation about the universal nature of reality. Guess it's just the wax buildup in my ears playing tricks on me. Anyway, as Mr. Dowd launched into what I imagined was a breathtaking lecture on the various branches of Buddhism, I found myself glancing over at Beetle Girl. She was chewing on the eraser end of a pencil, concentrating intently on Santa Dowd's every word. Come to think of it, so was most everyone else. Maybe his lecture really was breathtaking. The guy next to Beetle Girl flicked his eyes over to me. This time I caught the intensity and the message. Back off. I busied myself with decorating the cover of my new notebook. First, I drew the 3 interlocking yin-yang symbols, and then I wrote underneath the middle one, half in outline and half in regular, the Laughing Archer. That was the name of this really cool underground band in Houston that used to play all ages shows in our neighborhood. The words accidentally filled up the line that said name, but since you always put your name in the heading on every page in every school notebook in the world anyway, that didn't seem like that huge of a problem. It's funny how innocently things start out. So, tell me about Stanley. What do you know about him so far? We got some really good evidence here in the book that tells us actually quite a bit about him. Do you pick up on his attitude? It's kind of a bad attitude, right? Sarcastic, very sarcastic, but it's kind of like it's almost disrespectful because we can read his thoughts, but it doesn't come out that way because Mr. Dowd calls on him and he says, he wants to say, I'm a ventriloquist, but instead he says, no, sir. So it comes out respectfully, but what he's thinking is not. So sarcastic, smart alecky, kind of typical middle school boy, 8th grade boy. That makes sense to me. So we know he's in middle school. We know he's sarcastic. Tell me about his life. Courtney.
It seems like it's difficult because he moved to a brand new school and he got just embarrassed as soon as he walked in.
Oh, yeah. Challenging life. He, totally embarrasses himself, tips over in the chair, falls over. So it's embarrassing. It's a new school. Tell me about that. How many other schools has he been to that you know of?
5. 3.
5, 2, 3. Can we say multiple?
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Back in Houston, right?
In Houston, Texas.
And Alabama. So that's 2. And think about that. Life in Houston, Texas is probably different than life in Alabama. And Alabama life is probably different than
Pennsylvania.
suburban life in Pennsylvania in January. So moving from state to state. Go ahead.
What, because his mom said that this would be his last chance. Could it be he moved school because he was bad?
Excellent question. She says, Mom says, this is your last chance. I like the way that you referenced that in the book. Mom says, this is your last chance. So you might infer that, why is she saying that? Is she saying that because he was bad? Did he get into some kind of trouble? Is that why they've moved?
He probably got in trouble because he probably got in trouble at his old school because he was being too bad. So he moved.
Yeah. So maybe he got in trouble at his old school because of his attitude. Maybe he was being bad. Maybe he was being too sarcastic. Mom gives him a warning, which typically you get a warning if you've been doing something bad. Like, now you're warned. This is the last stop. That tells me a lot already about Sam without knowing the whole story. I have a pretty good picture of what he's walking into. And it's mid-year, too. When do most kids end up moving schools? Usually the end of the year, the beginning of the year. Like you move over the summer typically if you have kids in school so they can start school at a transition that makes sense for everybody else. But that doesn't always happen.
Since this is his last chance, maybe she's gonna homeschool him after if he gets in trouble.
If he gets in trouble, maybe she's going to have to homeschool him. And I don't know about you. I love my parents. Homeschooling, although it may sound fun,
It's not.
I'm a social butterfly, as they say, and I really enjoy being around people. So to be by myself, locked in my house, with my mom or dad having to teach me every single day, that would get old really quick. I would have a hard time with that. So it sounds like it might be fun. I think there'd be some challenges I'd have to overcome to be able to do that. So maybe that could be a bad thing for him. Maybe it could be a great thing. Maybe his mom's a great teacher. Who knows? We'll have to find out.
Maybe